Welcome to the second part of our introduction to ISO 14001. As already started in the first part, we now present the requirements for the further chapters of ISO 14001. At the end of each chapter, you will learn which documented information is required by the standard and which other documents should be prepared for an audit. Chapter 6 Planning contains requirements for risk management, survey of environmental aspects, planning of environmental objectives and measures to achieve these objectives. The standard requires the company to determine risks and opportunities. For example, a risk may be the use of environmentally hazardous chemicals in production. An opportunity can be sustainable products with which additional customers can be won. Environmental aspects are generally understood to include air emissions, wastewater, use of materials and natural resources, waste, and the use of energy sources. These aspects should be considered throughout the life cycle of the services offered and products produced. The aim is now to determine which of these environmental aspects have or could have a negative impact on the environment and how this can be improved. Based on the identified risks and opportunities and the determination of the relevant environmental aspects, environmental targets are now defined. The achievement of the environmental goals must be accessible by measurable key figures. In environmental management, measures must also be defined as to how these goals are to be achieved. The standard requires documented information on how the company deals with risks and opportunities. Furthermore, there must be a documented process for determining risks and opportunities. The results of the context analysis from Chapter 4 must be taken into account. In addition, the process must include the identification of significant environmental aspects and binding commitments. Often this process is called environmental planning. A register or list must also be kept of the binding obligations. This list must contain all legal requirements related to the identified environmental aspects. Chapter 7 defines requirements in the areas of resources, competence, awareness, communication, and on the topic of documented information. The first requirement is that the company provides sufficient resources to establish, implement, and improve the environmental management system. Another requirement is to ensure that people who are under the supervision of the company are competent. This includes, of course, that qualification measures are planned to make employees aware of their importance in relation to the environmental impact of their activities. Awareness is understood to mean that the employees of a company know and understand the environmental policy, the significant environmental aspects, and the environmental objectives. Everyone in the company should also be aware of what they can contribute to achieving the environmental goals. A communication process must also be established in the company that regulates how to communicate in relation to environmental management, both in terms of internal communication and externally. The requirements for documented information are the same as for other management system standards such as ISO 9001. This concerns the creation, updating, release, and distribution of documented information. In Chapter 7, no documented information is explicitly required. Since the required documented information for communication was restricted with the addition of, as appropriate. However, it is recommended to define a process in the environmental management system at least for the communication and control of the documented information. To implement environmental management, the company must define processes to ensure that environmentally relevant aspects are taken into account in the following areas: in the development of products and services, in the procurement of products and services, in the selection of suppliers, and in the disposal of the products produced or offered. Furthermore, a process must be established to ensure that emergency situations are handled appropriately. Documented information is required for all processes required in Chapter 8. This usually includes an emergency preparedness and response process, a supplier selection and procurement process, a product and service development process, and an end-of-life cycle process. In an environmental management system, the following activities must be set to evaluate environmental performance. First, an evaluation of compliance with binding commitments must be performed. Secondly, Key figures must be evaluated to verify the achievement of environmental objectives. Third, internal audits must be conducted on a regular basis. And finally, a management review must be conducted at scheduled intervals. Documented information must be retained on the following. First, on the assessment of compliance with the commitments. Secondly, on the fulfillment of the audit program and on the results of the audits. Documented information must also be kept on the results of management assessments. The last chapter defines the requirements for maintaining a continuous improvement process and dealing with errors or non-conformities. Documented information must be available on non-conformities, measures to eliminate them, and the results of corrective actions. Thank you for your time. If you have any further questions about environmental management, please take a look at our website www.praxis.at or contact us directly.